Practice. It's a word that we all know we need more of, and yet somehow we don't do enough of it. But in today's episode of Erudite Magic, I'm going to be talking about a book that I recently came across by H&R Magic Books called Practicing the Art of Magic. And it purports to help all of us become better at this facet of magic that we all know we need but don't do enough of. But the question becomes, does it help? What's in it? Is it worth the price? And ultimately, do I actually need a book to tell me to do something that I know I need to do? The book is by Clemens Ilgner, a German magician you've probably never heard of, or at least I hadn't before coming across this book. But Clemens knows a thing or two about practice, and that's because he's not only a magician, but also a musician. Anyone who's ever taken a music class or encountered a musician knows that to get good at performing with a musical instrument or singing or anything musical like that, you have to put consistent practice in. And in this book, Clemens is sharing decades of experience as a professional musician and applying what he knows to the world of magic. Now, the book is supposed to be a practical guide, which means that he presents some theories, some practical examples from the music world, and then mixes both of them up to give magicians a path to make practice both more efficient and more effective. Along the way, he's going to share some magic tricks, so it's not just theory and ways to practice. You will learn a few things as well, and we're going to get more into that in just a second. Let's talk for a second about the physical characteristics of the book, as we often do. The book is an approximately 130 plus page hardback with a dust jacket. The interior of the book is full color, which of course the text is primarily black and white with some red headers, and throughout the book there are photographs, the things that you'll need to perform the practice moves or learn the tricks that he's talking about. This isn't a hard book to read, and in fact I read it in just a couple of sittings. The font size is relatively large, the margins are fairly generous, and while I don't have any specific insight into the format that the book took, it feels like they wanted to make sure that the importance of it was conveyed in a hardback, which I can appreciate. The book is published by H&R Magic Books out of Texas. Dick Hatch and Charlie Randall, for those who don't know, those are the H and R of H&R Magic Books. And in full transparency, they sent me a copy of this book to review. So let's get into the details of the review. So what exactly is this? The author, as I mentioned before, is a musician, and it's important to him to see that magicians use their practice time more efficiently and more effectively than they already do, while at the same time recognizing that most magicians don't really like to practice. A lot of what I read in here were different ideas about practice, training the left and the right side of your brains to make all of your movements more graceful and natural. Incorporating timing into your practice. What about structured versus unstructured practice? How long should you practice for each time? He briefly touches on topics like what's the difference between practice and rehearsal? Should you have dedicated time to practice, or should you do it just while you're in front of the TV? He further gives you tips to deal with stage fright. How do you overcome that? What are some ways that practice will alleviate those types of things? There are even sections in here on mental practice and some of the prevailing theories right now about how that can improve your performance. A big chunk of the book in the middle, though, is devoted to teaching you tricks or routines that incorporate all of these different facets of practicing that he's talking about. And as you can imagine, being a book on practice and developing your sleight of hand, most of these tricks are done with normal objects, regular cards, coins, sponge balls, little balls for like a cups and balls routine, and a wand. Some of the things that he teaches are techniques. For example, he has a section teaching you the Elmsley count. Now, if you already know the Elmsley count, a fairly basic sleight for many card magicians, then this section may not provide that much value. The reason he's teaching you, though, the Elmsley count or any of these different sleights is so that you can take that sleight, practice it, and then put it into a routine to entertain an audience. And I think that the author was trying to make sure that this was a complete guide. Whether or not you know any card tricks or any tricks at all, you'd be able to take this book, learn the sleights that he's teaching you, and then apply those into a routine. Most of these tricks are not original to him. They're his take on an existing classic. But if you're the type of magician who's looking for something new and exciting, that's not what this is. It's really there to fill out the book and to help put into place practice tips that he's suggesting. Just to make it clear what you're going to learn, he'll teach you some sleights with sponge balls, including the 10 count, the way to make a sponge ball vanish, and use a wand. Those are used in the context of a Benson bowl style routine that he teaches. He'll teach you a click pass with coins. The click pass is used for a coins to glass style routine. And later he'll teach you some techniques like a wand vanish and a shuttle pass, which can be incorporated into a cups and ball style routine, although he does not teach a complete routine here. This book feels like it was geared more towards toward a beginner magician, not because of the ideas behind the practice. I felt like those could apply to almost anyone who hasn't spent significant amounts of time practicing, and let's face it, most of us have not spent as much time as we should, but because of the types of things he's teaching in here with the Elmsley count, or a shuttle pass, a click pass, these all feel like fairly basic moves, things that you would try to teach a beginner. Therefore, this is one of those rare books that I could sincerely recommend to beginners, and truthfully, we probably need a lot more focus on practice when we were first starting out. At the end of the day though, you aren't going to learn that many tricks to be able to perform out of this book, so if you're a beginner, it probably isn't going to quite fit the bill. But if you've watched this far in the video, I can probably tell that you are a book-loving magician, and that means no matter what the size of your library, you probably already have hundreds of books on your shelf. And if you're looking for other routines that you could practice and learn, look no further than the sponsor of this week's video, Don's Magic and Books. Don carries all kinds of magic books, whether you're a sleight of hand enthusiast, you're someone who loves gimmicks, self-working tricks, or just learning the coolest knuckle-busting moves. He provides for whatever kind of magician you are by offering not only the latest and greatest books, but also rare, hard-to-find, out-of-print books that he wants to make sure stay in circulation for as long as possible. And he does this by providing them at tremendously fair prices. Because he specializes in these harder-to-find books, he's constantly getting in new inventory, and typically as quickly as they come in, they go out. Because as you'll discover once you start shopping with Don, you'll become a lifelong fan. I know I've purchased my fair share of books from him, and I love the fact that he cares for books as much as you and me. So no matter what you're in the market for, start shopping with Don's Magic and Books this week. Let's talk about the value proposition of this book, and we'll incorporate some themes about what the quality of the book is as well. The book is $45 at full retail, and in today's world, that is a relatively low price. I've done a video on what we feel like we should expect in today's world at different price points, and you can check that out up here. But in this case, $45 is more of an older price point. So you can find a lot of great older books at this price. You probably aren't going to find a lot of newer books coming in at $45. But as we say on this channel, the price is merely the cost. What's the value to you? What's in this book that you're going to be able to help your life with for $45? While there are some really great tips on practicing and some things, honestly, that I had never even considered, I didn't feel like this was a thick, meaty book. As I mentioned before, I read it in just a couple of sittings, and I gained a lot of interesting ideas from it. But because I'm more of an intermediate magician, I already know the Elmsley count, I've got a click pass, I have multiple versions of a coin to glass, some of the routines in the middle of the book didn't really add that much value to what I already have on my shelf or I already know. Therefore, it was more those practice sessions that interested me. But once you strip out the center section with all of the sleights and routines that he was trying to teach, the sections about practice itself aren't huge. While I can appreciate what the author is doing to make sure that there are routines in here that you can learn and do no matter what your skill level, it feels like this is more geared toward absolute beginners. But if you're an absolute beginner, there's a very high chance that you're not learning from magic books. You're still in the stage of watching YouTube tutorials or buying downloads online. However, I do think that one potential niche for this book, and a place where it offers a lot of value, is as a gift to a new or aspiring magician. The problem there is they are unlikely to want to sit down and read a book about practice, and they're not going to learn a ton of routines, so it's not as exciting as, say, something like Card College that gives you a lot of different moves and a lot of different tricks in that same price point. Certainly there is value to be found in here, but it's not chock full of magic. In terms of the production values, they're absolutely fine. I mentioned that the spacing is rather generous. However, everything is written up so that you can learn the sleights and routines, and of course you'll get the concepts about practice. Full color pictures are perfectly adequate to show you exactly what your hands need to be doing when you're vanishing a sponge ball or performing the click pass, but it's unlikely that you're buying this particular book to learn those moves. At the end of the day, I believe we need more books on practice. I know I'm as guilty as anybody else of not practicing enough, and a book like this helps to inspire me to do better. It gives me some tools and techniques, some things that I hadn't considered before, like using a metronome and working on my timing of the routines and not just the dexterity of what my fingers need to do or training my brain to run it on autopilot. If you too are interested in learning more about practice and you're the kind of magician who wants to expand your library and have something on this, then I recommend this with the understanding of everything I've shared in this video about the contents. If you want to dive more into the subject of practice, this book has inspired me to write up some thoughts on the subject in my newsletter, The Erudite Magic Digest, which is a free subscription, and you can find it down in the description below. If you've watched this far in the video, then it's highly likely you want to be involved in that conversation. So click that like button, subscribe, and hopefully we can continue this conversation in the comments about what practice means to you and what are some of the best resources that you've seen for magicians wanting to learn to practice more effectively and efficiently. As always, my friend, I appreciate you watching. And until next time, keep reading.